Welcome to Markers and Milestones, where we explore educational opportunities for young men and women beyond traditional college, all from a Christ-centered perspective. I'm Lee Bortons, and I'm here with my co-host, Amanda Kleist. Today is Wednesday, October 18th, 2023, and we're joined by John Stamas of Defender Capital, an investment company. Thanks for joining us, John.
Happy to be here.
So John and I are good friends, and I'm really glad that he agreed to be on because he does something I think is extraordinary in the summer that our families will want to know about. But mostly I wanted him on because he's in finance and he's in Christian finance, and he clings to the Lord very closely. And finance is one of those venues where you don't have to get a lot of degrees to be successful. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. So I wanted to get John to describe what he did to become the investor he is, as well as talk about his summer program. And I'm talking about you like you're not in here in the room with us, but you are. So now our audience knows why you've been invited. So John, tell us a little bit about your background and your family and what you're interested in is classical education first, so we can get to know you personally.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on and respecting my opinion, I guess. I was born in the Northeast and spent the first 30 years in the New York, New Jersey area. I worked for Oppenheimer Co. after I went to school at Rutgers College. I was an economics major, one class short of an English major. I decided it wasn't worth the extra summer class to be able to say I was a double major. I'm glad I did it. But I loved English actually more than economics. My only job I've ever had has been a stockbroker, first at Oppenheimer from the mid-90s to 2000. And then when I moved to Charlotte in 98, I went out on my own and started Defender Capital. So we're a money management firm. It's a fancy way of saying an old-fashioned stock brokerage firm. We manage money for individuals. We have in the past managed money for committees. It's often become much more difficult to convince 12 people to do something than one person to do something. So our practice has not grown perhaps as large as it could have been, but it's grown in a way that's very manageable and very nice. So we work with about 200 households around the US. We do work with a couple of foundations that are both Christian, managing their assets. And that's a little bit about our practice. We are a 6-person team. We pray before our team meetings on Monday and Thursday, where our mantra is when you come to work, you think about the other 5 people first. If we all do that, we should be in pretty good shape. Our client retention is traditionally exceptional. We do the right thing by people. And I think, words are cheap, actions matter a lot more. And then over time, you build a reputation. Mark Twain said, if you want to get to know a man, move to a small town. And I figured in New York City, having a good reputation wasn't really going to help me much. So I first moved to Charlotte, which was a small town in the mid-90s. And then here in Southern Pines, about 6 years ago. And it works. If you are an honest, hardworking person, people like that, and things seem to take care of themselves.
Good. All right, so you have your children at a classical school. So tell us about how in the world you stumbled into that.
Yeah, fabulous. It started with a book, like a lot of great ideas, and it wasn't mine. A book called Rethinking Orphanages in the 21st Century, written by a guy named Mackenzie. I read it in 1999, right after I moved to Charlotte. And it was talking about the problems in the school system, the problems in American homes. And I launched at that time a nonprofit called My Home Carolina with the idea of trying to help become an orphanage alternative to the orphanages, which often separate families and kids. It quickly morphed into more of an education focus, and it was called Carolina School for Children. We threw an annual dinner party. We went to visit some of the schools around the country, like Hershey, the Milton Hershey School in Pennsylvania. And we're really kind of amazed at what they were doing. We raised about $250,000 over a period of 9 years, throwing just a supper club. And then we stumbled across Brookstone. Brookstone Schools in Charlotte is a classical Christian school, very similar to some of the curriculum you have, Lee, at Classical Conversations, and similar to the Sandhills Classical Christian curriculum. And their school was for the inner city kids. So it was an incomes-based school. We raised about 98% of the tuition for each kid. And over the years, I got involved and ultimately became chairman of the board for about 5 years. But our kids couldn't go there because of our income situation. So when we were ready to put our kids in school, we started in a public school. It was a very good public school, or so we thought. And after a couple of years there, we realized it was not even close to what Brookstone was. So we started looking for a place to move. We moved to the Sandhills. We enrolled our children in Sandhills Classical Conversations. My wife became the PA president. I joined the board, became vice chair, and have been very involved. COVID has just caused an explosion in an interest in our school. Often people are running from public. They're not running to Christ. Our challenge now is to have them appreciate the classical education model, but even more importantly, to open up their hearts to Christ.
Appreciate that's a hallmark of John, that you just always put the Lord first. And so just all the philanthropy you've done, I didn't know all of that. So I'm not surprised. It's very interesting. And so I can see how it led to education. So you have something you offer in the summer that I heard about last year. And are you going to do it again, and tell us what that is, and how can our students find out about it?
Sure. I think it starts with my brother and I are the kind of the founders of the firm, and the two partners, if you will, principals. We believe in giving back. And so we've had interns for 20 years, and we started with just one intern per summer. And then it became 2 interns per summer. But as you know, if you care about people, you pour a lot into them. And we started talking about how much we're pouring into, and is that the best model? So about 3 years ago, we started one out here in Pinehurst. And that was for 4 boys and 4 girls. The guys stay at my house. The girls have a rented house that we take care of. And they come in on a Sunday night. We do a welcome at my home. My wife cooks a fabulous dinner. Everybody meets. We talk about the itinerary for the week. And they're all clients' children. We have opened it up in the past, for the last seat or two, if we had trouble filling it in a specific year, to non-client students. The internship is for rising freshmen and recently graduated college students. So think of it in terms of 18 to 22. It's from all over the country. This past year, we had South Carolina, West Point, Michigan, Colorado State. So, it's nice for the kids to come. They like having both genders in the room. It allows for, some really healthy discussions. We have guest speakers. This year, we had a West Point graduate who's a special forces person speak. He's a parent at our school. We had a retired heart surgeon from Duke who played football there, went on to become a heart surgeon in Chicago, an entrepreneur, and lives here, and gave a wonderful speech to the kids on life lessons. And then we had an executive from KPMG also speak. So guest speakers, the morning session is 9 to 12. We go deep dive into one of the aspects of asset management. Lunchtime, we do a break from 1 to 3. Then we do an afternoon session, usually with a guest speaker. Then we have a dinner, and then we play either bocce or ping pong, or we did tug of war last year, which was a pretty popular activity. And then on Friday morning, they all head home. Their feedback is really some of the most, it's really awesome, the feedback these kids provide. Some of them called it the best week of their life, so. And then the parents, when the kids get home and they say, we had a really great experience, the parents become more appreciative of the efforts you put forth for them.
Yeah. That's a really good idea. So you said it's mostly clients, children's. Is it going to ever be open to other people? I know you said you have to fill it, but you don't have a process for other people, it sounds like.
Not yet. You're always questioning how big to make it. Right now 8 seems to work pretty well. If we have more than that, I'm gonna have to kick my wife and the boys out of the house for a week. So it's probably a family decision before it's a business decision.
I see. So the reason why I wanted you on the show is because I think what you do is not all that unusual, not in the sense that yours isn't like probably a better program than most. A lot of people aren't aware of is that businesses have all kinds of internship programs and opportunities. So is that statement true for people in the financial industry, or with your industry, are you unusual?
I know peers in my space, and I would say the smaller firms don't often have internships. Internships often are looked at as a way to get cheap labor to do some things at a company. We don't have a lot of busy work at our company, so to hire an intern to do busy work would be kind of non-productive for both. So I think the larger firms, and not necessarily in money management, but certainly in investment banking and private equity and consulting like Accenture, they offer internships, paid internships, very highly sought after. And those internships are often ways that college kids get jobs even before they graduate. So it is popular in the consulting, banking, and private equity world. It's not as common in the asset management space.
Okay, do you have some questions, Amanda, before I ask more of mine?
Sure. Nice to meet you, John. I appreciate you taking the time. And I guess my question is, you're in this space, you have a Christian worldview. So I have actually two questions for you. My traditional question is, how do you push forward Christian values in this internship? Because I've heard your speakers, and you didn't lead with they attend such and such a church. You led with role in function. So how is that, and is that in this internship?
No, it's a great question. So my brother and I kind of put the internship together. He and I are two of the four speakers. We have two other teammates who are also Christians at our firm do the speaking. The guest speakers are Christian, and I think we have as a small company, privately owned, we have the latitude to pick who we want to speak to the kids. Mm-hmm. So that pretty much plays a big part in who we think would be a good role model and a good career model for the kids. So, part of it is the selection of the speaker on our behalf. We don't really tell the speakers what to speak about. Often we give them the guidance of, as you've gotten older, how has faith played a role in your life? What do you wish somebody told you when you were in college? What life lessons are actually more important than career lessons? And we give them really a lot of latitude as to what they want to speak about. We had a golf pro who came here and talked about his journey to make the tour. And then he gave all the kids a little bit of a lesson on, basics of putting and holding a club. And half the kids had never touched a golf club. He happens to be the guy who leads our church as our preacher, but he showed up as a golfer. So you can imagine the conversation was sprinkled with, meaning and purpose.
I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that you are showing it to your interns integrated into the whole person, because we really are thinking about, in classical Christian education, the whole of a person, not just their role specific things. So my question sideways on this, John, is, let's say somebody came to you and said, so you started with 2, you went to 4, you went to 8. How did you get started? How would you tell another businesswoman or businessman in this space, here's the 3 things you should do if you're thinking about this?
I think a couple of thoughts, and I'm not sure they're going to fit exactly how you're asking them, but I'll just throw them out. One is, are you somebody who wakes up early, is passionate, and wants to make a difference? And that person probably should work for themselves. That doesn't mean they should work for themselves day one. In the case of me, I worked for Oppenheimer for a few years. I learned the fundamentals, the basics. It was, in my view, a very pagan firm. But I took away some fundamental lessons and then went out on my own. I think there's some people who don't want to get up early and run hard, and they have maybe better balance in life than I do. And they want to work in a cubicle. They want to work for the woman or the man, and they want to shut it down at 5 and not think about things that I think about at 3 a.m. So I think part of it is a personal, what kind of life do I want to live? What kind of skills and talents did God endow me with? And how can I apply them either for myself or for another enterprise? As it relates to our firm, I think once somebody from Princeton told me once a long time ago, a Christian mentor said, find something that's hard to do and really be good at it, and you'll be fine with your career. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. There's a tendency to try to, and certainly in America, to try to make a quick buck or just do enough. I think if you become a craftsman in our industry, I have often found that people kind of hit a point and then they cruise. And I have a hard time looking Lee or other clients in the eye and having them think I'm cruising, right? There should be some self-respect. And I think being a professional means you continue to try to get better. And if you do that in our industry, I have found it leads to a competitive advantage. And then you try to hire people with that philosophy as well.
I appreciate your answer, and it fit categories. There'll be a question I'll ask you at the end based on something you said earlier, but back to you, Lee.
Okay, thank you. So I like that you said the word craftsman. There's a IT company local to Raleigh that's Christian run, owned, principled. has a great internship program, and they don't want the kids that they bring in to be in college. They want to train them the way they think a Christian man should be trained, rather than undoing the damage that can occur when a young person is sent off. And it seems like you have that philosophy in the sense of helping your clients' children. So I opened up by saying that not everyone, that money is a place where you don't have to go to school. Do you agree with me? Yeah, what would you say? Yes, you need to go get a degree to do what you're doing, or is there another path available?
I think it's a great question, and I think there's a story, a 2-second story. When Costco first came out, they merged with a company called Price Club, and it was a warehouse department grocery store, and nobody respected it, and they thought it was kind of a blue collar store. So Costco made the decision to only accept American Express as a way to brand them as a step above. 25 years later, they called American Express and said, we don't need your card anymore. Instead of charging 2%, we're going to use Visa and only charge 1%. They had reached a point in their company history where a decision they made 25 years ago wasn't the right decision to make today. I share that to say, I think in the case of education, I went to Rutgers, I studied economics. I haven't used a single thing in my career that I learned in college. However, Oppenheimer probably wouldn't have hired me if I didn't have a Rutgers college degree on my application. Now, that was early 90s, New York City. That things have changed. I don't know the industry now from a hiring perspective. Would we hire somebody who didn't have a college degree? Perhaps. I think there is an element, rightfully or wrongfully, assume that if you went to MIT and you graduated on time, and you can look me in the eye, and you have the soft skills, and you have a track record at MIT of doing very well, I think it's a safer hire than somebody who shakes my hand, has good personal skills, and has read some good books, but may not have some of the technical knowledge that an MIT graduate. So I think it has changed. I'm not a fan of most of the colleges in America, so I probably lean more towards your side, Lee. I do think the craftsman world, we've gone from agrarian to industrial, we're into information tech. I don't know how we ever get back to the masses being craftsmen in an advanced economy. The bigger challenge I have with this issue is, when somebody dropped out of school, they went to work on the farm, and if they dropped out of school in the industrial age, they went to work in a factory, and neither were costs to the system. When you drop out of school in the information age, you will not get a job at Google, likely. And therefore, you have an abundance of now people being dropped out and not educated for the type of industries that we're in. I think classical education is incredibly equipped to teach a critical mind, which is then actually the most valuable educational background for the information age. But I digress. I think you can't get everybody to work at Google in an information age where people are dropping out dramatically.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, and that's why this is called Markers and Milestones, and we're looking at other options, but we have a lot of college folks on too. But I'm thinking of a young man who I actually work with now, and he's like 27, 28 years old, and he's just bright. And he stumbled into the realm of investing. He did really well with his own money, and so his relatives started asking him to invest their money for them. Now I've given him money, some other friends are giving him money, and he doesn't have any training or degrees in this at all. He just studies on his own and goes to the right seminars and things like that. So I think maybe a problem with the way he's doing it, though, is he'll be stymied. Is there licensure issues that he's going to be butting up against, or fraud because he's taking people's money? I mean, what's that legal environment for someone who's trying to do this just because they love it, not because they necessarily went to college for it?
Yeah, I've been in it so long, I'm not sure what the emerging entries are now as far as legal requirements. I think when you do manage other people's money, there ought to be some awareness of the investor as to the credentials of the advisor. With that said, the gentleman you mentioned, whether he went to college or he went to work in a factory, he sounds like a winner, right? Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Richard Bach, the winners are still winning. I think he would have been a winner no matter what. I think if you're talking about the issue of 7 licenses to cut hair, and should you need this many licenses to manage money, I think they're all absurd. I don't know where you put the line, but I would say the line is way too overregulated in general.
So in other words, if I'm trying to encourage a child who is good at money to follow, wants to do what you do, and you do it very well, and from a Christian perspective, he's really gonna have to do it all on his own or go to college, it sounds like there's not a middle ground that you know of.
Well, he could work at a firm like ours, or there are other firms where he could work at where, you know, he wouldn't have to go through the process of starting his own firm, which is far more complex. So he could work with them. I think one of the things that's changed is when I got into the industry, I learned from either a mentor, a dead person, or a book. You know, I think, you know, I spend half my day now on podcasts. I think there has been a democratization of information. Importantly, information alone doesn't make you smart. The ability to filter and contemplate and evaluate the information is what makes you smart. So I would say the opportunity exists now because information is out there. How you process that, in my opinion, is also out there, but it does take some mentoring and some guidance.
So, do you have any organizations to recommend? So in other words, because of working with you and some other people, I'm aware of the idea of a family office. And a lot of times there's training like you're doing that for your clients, where it might just be family office weekend, or it might be, you know, less intensive than what you're offering, but where people, not even 18, but 28 and 38, who are whose parents maybe were investors. Where can they get training on the inheritance that they're going to get, and how to not, you know, lose the work that their family put into to create wealth? How do you help them? Because I'm not saying they want a degree, they just want to not be dumb about what they're receiving.
Right. Well, scriptures are clear that you have a responsibility to your, you know, to the people below you. So I think you start with the patriarch and the matriarch, and we send a quarterly report out to our clients, and we encourage them to send it to their kids. We often share that leaving your child faith, you know, the instructions on faith and the instructions on investing are two incredible things that you can leave them with. The first is up to them. The second is up to us to help them encourage their children to take ownership of financial matters. People don't like to discuss finance. They don't spend enough time on it. Parents don't do it. It's one of the reasons they love the internship, because we're doing, in essence, some of their work for them. So I think first and foremost, it's a parent responsibility to teach kids not just work ethic, but what do you do with the money once you make it? I think that's one of them. And then I think, you know, we have a lot of young clients that we work with. We don't have a minimum as a firm. That's unusual. We have clients that are 25 and clients that are, you know, 85. So I don't know if that answers your question, Lee.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't know if there was maybe an association you guys belong to that you wanted to recommend. I don't have one to recommend either. But I just know they exist. Okay. You have anything else, Amanda?
Well, yeah, I told John that I was going to ask him a question. So I heard you ask a question, or say the internships got asked a question of the people you invited. What would they tell themselves, right? What life lessons? So my question for you is, what questions would you, John, want to tell the answers to as John in Rutgers and at Oppenheimer and at starting a firm? So what would you tell your younger self? And what question would it answer at those three stages?
Well, what question would I ask myself? So if I was at if I was a Rutgers student and somebody was talking to me later in life, well, the collegiate experience for me, I was appointed to the Naval Academy. I went to Rutgers to play a sport instead of taking an appointmentship. So I already went there for the wrong reason. And my 4 years were characterized by, pathetic studies and learning next to nothing relative to what I've learned post-college. I would tell students, if you're going to college, make the most of it, study varied subjects. I don't think it matters. Again, back to this 27-year-old that runs money for Lee. I don't think it matters. If you're a winner and you're driven, I don't think you need to be so career focused at 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 25. It's about learning. It's about being, becoming a man or a woman so that you're attractive to people when you speak to them. I mean, if I meet a 23-year-old and she's attractive and she's sharp and she's smart, and I say attractive from the inside out, she's got energy, she cares, she's not about herself. Those are people that you want to hire, regardless. The major you ask is probably the 19th question on the list, and I certainly wouldn't ask about the grades at college. What college they go to, I do think there's something there. Or at least maybe I've been brainwashed over the years to hold up an MIT versus a community college. But I do think there's something to standards and excellence. To the Oppenheimer person, Wall Street is one of those, when you sell mattresses, you go to work every day trying to sell a mattress. When you're in the investment business, your whole life is about money. And as a Christian, you can imagine the balancing act that is. And in a lot of jobs, you can't work harder to make more money. But in this industry, if you want to put in extra 2 hours a day, you can make more money. So it's really a difficult career for somebody who's not a well-equipped Christian to balance. And I think that the history of the people that I've worked with is they became very unbalanced, as was I in my 20s, because that industry is one that lends itself to that. So if I was talking to a young Oppenheimer stockbroker today, I would give them 10 books on these are the best mentors I've ever read about. I'd read these books 3 times. I call them super texts, the books that you buy and keep and underline and hand out. There's a lot of things that are read that either don't need to be finished or can just be thrown out. But I think there are some great books. Principles, Elon Musk, what makes Tesla great is he reduced his whole mindset to what are the starting principles. So I think in investing, there's principles like there are in physics. And then for, if somebody's getting started, I always tell people the learning curve is more important than the earnings curve. If you're in your 20s, what you make is irrelevant. What matters is, are you becoming personally somebody valuable? Is your skill set valuable? And then if you joined a company, would you be invaluable to them? Because if you're invaluable to them, obviously pay takes care of itself. So I don't know if that kind of gets to what you were hoping for. Hope so.
It does. You succeeded.
Yeah, I thought that was really great, breaking it down to those 3 levels like that, and invaluable. I think it's really hard when you're younger, unless you just have this unusual level of maturity, to recognize what invaluable means in service to other people. So it just takes time.
I think if, it's back to Christianity 101, Christianity, if you are in my view, if you're sold out for your faith, you're invaluable to everybody in your network because you've just become reliable. And I think, my brother and I often talk about, working together, the peace that comes from knowing that he'll do the right thing and that things won't fall through the cracks. It makes life so much easier. So there's the Christian principles, when played out, we have bookstores full of books that don't give Christ his credit. And yet there's a million self-help books that have just copied his words. So I think there's so much to be said about using Christian principles and running a practice. And with your clients, there are opportunities to have conversations. And I think when those opportunities come up, you have to address them.
Yeah. So do you have a book? You keep mentioning books. You mentioned the one by Musk. Do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to someone who's interested in your field? Something that's not so difficult, it gets the basics.
Well, Hero for Humanity would be the book. It's William Wilberforce's story. It's not a financial book, but what it's important is John Newton talks to him when he's in Parliament and he's afraid to talk about the gospel. And Newton says to him, God put you there, just do what you do best. And I think, whether you're in financial services or any other industry, God puts you in a place and you can be Christ in any industry he wants you to be. I think specific to your financial question, Security Analysis, by Ben Graham is kind of one of the classics. A lot of the things Buffett has read are really valuable. He's a very successful long-term investor. Howard Marks is another name. But investing is changing, and I think they always say history rhymes, it doesn't repeat. Investing has principles, but there's also things that are changing. And what I mean by that is in Warren Buffett's day, 50 years ago, a company was valued by its buildings, its brick and mortar. Today, companies are valued by what goes up and down the elevator and how good their patent attorneys are. So certain books have more relevance in investing. 50 years ago, investing is just getting harder and much more difficult. I think there are historical lessons. As a money management firm, we invest in the US because we have a much better awareness of the history of Earth, the Earth today, and how that affects investments. And it has kept us from investing outside the US for 20 years. And it has made a significant difference in our clients' lives. China may have grown for the last 20 years, but if you put money in the Chinese market 20 years ago, you didn't do nearly as well as the US market. People confuse growth with profits. The airline industry, 100 years ago, if you told people how many planes would fly, and they would have thought, surely I should invest in airline stocks, and they would have been 100% wrong. Making money off of a trend is different than a trend. And I think there are a lot of industries that have been horrific investments, even though they've grown, because those industries, autos, personal computers, planes, trains, automobiles, all of those historically have not been good investments. So studying history sets the table for you to be a good investor. So if I was going to tell somebody as a freshman at MIT on what to study, I would say history. I would say critical thinking. I would have them on an engineering path, because then if he can think critically and he understands history, he certainly can understand a modern consumer products company.
Yeah, well, that shows what a classicalist you are. Do you think AI is going to be one of those railroads, airplanes in industry?
So it's a subject I know a lot about. AI has two sides to it. You have the enablers, people, and AI, to simplify it, is advanced computing, right? We've been doing it for 50 years. Intel created the first government-sponsored microchip after the Japanese dumped DRAMs on our shores, and Intel had to pivot out of DRAMs. So you have a history of advanced compute. We are now going into what you might call an accelerated stage of advanced compute. There are the enablers. NVIDIA would be the most well-known, chip companies. Then there are the factories that make the chips, like Intel and Taiwan Semiconductor. And then there are companies that make the equipment that go into those factories, like ASML, KLA Tencor, Teradyne. So you have the people who are going to be making the chips and testing the chips and designing the chips. Those are what I would call the enablers of the AI revolution. And then you have the appliers. And the appliers would be a healthcare, HCA is a national healthcare company, and they're using advanced compute to now all of a sudden figure out how to schedule nurses better. Instead of them using paper or Excel, they're using much more complicated software and much more powerful chips in order to change how they handle scheduling nurses. So this is very important. Nobody can predict the future. And if you can't predict the future, what makes you a great company is getting around the corner when it becomes obvious to all. Getting around a corner requires an excellent culture. Excellent cultures start with humility, back to Christ. So the companies we look for great companies that execute really well. So whether it's AI or some new paradigm shift in 10 years, they'll be adopters of that because they're humble, they're well run, and they'll get around the corner faster. You're reducing the investment risk from prediction to execution. And historically, I would rather bet on Lee Borton's coming up with a good idea in the next 2 years than a 21-year-old who hasn't started their career yet, because you have a history of execution. The 21-year-old doesn't. Investing is about probability, and probability for Lee versus the 21 or a Danaher that has a history of execution. I think they take that AI technology and run with it.
So you're always
Really?
looking at the people. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, that elevator up and down. So, John, I've heard you say humility, Christ at the center, and list colleges. Not one of them is a Christian college. Is that a reason I don't hear them on your list?
Well, I think MIT was the only school I kind of mentioned. Maybe I mentioned another one. I use MIT just as an example of a technical engineering school. I think engineering is the key place to study if you're going to.
Okay.
So the hedge fund we partner with is a Frenchman, and all he's hiring is data scientists, but he's a Wall Street firm. So why is a Wall Street firm only hiring data scientists? Is because he recognizes AI is going to hollow out financial analysts and a lot of a lot of jobs that can be done by computer. What can't be done by computer, poker can still beat a computer, chess can't, is the critical thinking capability. So I think engineering becomes the most important thing to study in the collegiate world. So I would say I'm thinking more engineering than that.
Okay.
Grove City is a wonderful engineering school, and it's a Christian school. But I have two sons, 14, 13. By the time they leave me for college, they ought to be equipped, and I want them to, I don't want the college to turn them into a Christian. It's the parents' job, so while I think it's important for them not to go to a school that hates God, the goal would be that they love God by the time they leave my house. They spend 4 years or 2 years, or maybe it's a craftsman internship, and become really good at something, and then have an employable skill for life.
Mhm. All right, so then I have one last question for you. Money is kind of scary right now, with regional banks struggling, inflation going nuts, all kinds of things happening. What is your advice to a young person and managing their finances? I know you said the learning curve over the earning curve. Explain what that means and how that applied to them, and trying to muddle through and manage the money crisis we're in right now.
So if you're in your 20s, when I say learning curve instead of the earnings curve, I wouldn't take a job at 30 where I learn nothing for 10 years. I take a job for $3,000 where I learn a ton for 10 years. So what matters in your 20s, and even your 30s, I would argue, certainly in your 20s and 30s, is take a job focused on, is it going to keep my learning curve steep? Am I working with a mentor who's going to give me the time and has wisdom and principles that I'm going to become better because I work for this company? That to me is far more important than the extra 10 or 20,000 I might get at company B, where it's not a learning environment, not a good culture, blah, blah, blah. So I think if you're in your 20s and 30s, emphasize, who am I going to work for? Is it a reputable group? Talk to people that have worked for that person or company before. Find out how much time they actually got mentored. Focus on learning, don't focus on money, and then the money will come. That would be that answer. As it relates to what to do with money in your 20s, build good habits. You don't make much money in your 20s. So it's not a matter of you're going to change your life at 60 based on what you do at 20, financially speaking. But what will affect you is, are you building good habits? Do you learn to only use a credit card for emergencies? Or do you use it, slipshod? So there's a lot of principles. The Millionaire Next Door, there's the Ramseys. There's people who emphasize be disciplined. But quite frankly, if you're a Christian at 18, by the time you're 21, applying Christian principles of modesty, and you ought to not be in a situation where you have bad spending styles. So, and then again, back to learning. In your 20s and 30s, the more you can learn about investing, the more you can start to benefit from what Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest. Mm-hmm. So if you can learn at 25 and start putting money away, there was the comparison of Polly Prudent versus Sally Spender. Polly Prudent put away money at 20, Sally Spender didn't put it away till 30, and Sally never caught her. So yes, learning about investing matters. The earlier you can do it, the more disciplined you can be about your lifestyle, will enable a larger amount to be saved.
Right. Hey, do you have anything else for Amanda?
No, other than to appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Well,
this is really good. Yeah, oh, you're helpful. I think we need to have a different conversation where we bring you on and we just talk about money in general for our families to listen to. They really are saturated with Dave Ramsey kind of principles, which are very, very wonderful for starting you off, but they aren't necessarily the smartest ones for as you continue to invest. And so that would be an interesting conversation too. But meanwhile, I appreciate how much you reflect Christ, and if nothing else, hopefully people will read the authors that you mentioned in a couple of the books. And that was just really great that you said Heroes for Humanity as your favorite book on money, because it is all about our principles. So thank you so much for being with us, John.
Happy to be here. I'll give you a teaser. I think if I ever spoke with you again about investing, the subject line might be, what's your edge? Because investing is always about an edge, and when I say edge, what do you know because of your hard work that isn't widely known?
Yeah. All right. That's something to invest in. Thank you so much, gang. I'll see you next time. Bye, Amanda.
Bye.
Bye, Amanda. Bye, Lee.
Bye, John.